Hey everybody, it's Tuesday.
And welcome to this week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily.
I
And we're happy to be here with you tonight.
almost said it was Thursday.
I
Felt
was
like
wondering
Thursday
that.
all week.
Yeah, it has felt like a long week.
Yeah.
But I think that's a funny thing that a lot of people can relate to, because if you are in Wisconsin, then you just had fishing opener, and that's a really exciting thing. And if you're in Minnesota, then fishing opener is about to come up, and we're going to talk about that. And if you're anywhere else, then let us know where you're at in your seasons, because those are the two that I'm keeping track of right now.
Yeah, and we went from 50 degrees to 90 degrees. I think my truck said 88 today. I don't know if some of the other thermometers along the road weren't agreeing with my pickup, but it was hot.
It was.
Is still hot.
And with that, we're getting quite a lot of big storms. So I think that's kind of across the Midwest. I think that, there's even people that have gotten some bigger weather than even what we are having. But that's something that kind of shakes up the system as well.
Yep. Especially, those of us that are starting to get out for panfish and start thinking about those shallow waters, when we get these wind events that are, gusting at 40 and blowing across the lake, you really dirty up that water, and it can make that bite kind of tough. But hang in there, it'll settle down.
And usually we like to use this part of the show to bring you kind of a fishing report, an in-season and ice report. But I think finally in most places that I know of, ice is gone. So unless you're in Canada, but if you are, give us a report on that, because I'm interested in where that's at. But I think, for down here, to be honest, we were not on the water. And so I cannot even begin to tell you how Wisconsin conditions are. But I can tell you, as far as our local river system, the Wolf River, I am seeing a lot of great information come out of there. So a lot of walleyes are still going downstream. White bass are still going kind of up and down and all in between, because that's how they do that. But, I've seen actually people catching catfish and all kinds of other stuff as well. So a lot going on in our local system. And that's part of what makes me excited to go out for that this weekend.
Yep. And let us know what you're doing and how it's going for you, what you're doing to prepare for opener. Because I think for Minnesota opener, because I think that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, and maybe get a couple tips in there. So
that is for sure. But, like Josh said, if you have questions or anything along the way, put that in the comments and we'll talk about that. But otherwise, let's bring in one of our very favorite people in the world. Welcome to the show, Brad Hawthorne.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, guys.
So thanks for being here tonight.
I'm super excited. I really like this podcast. I really do. It's raw. You get good information in here, and I don't know. Thank you guys for allowing me to be on.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So obviously, we know you pretty well, but in case there's anyone here who doesn't, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yep, I am. I believe it's 18 years now. I've been a full-time guide on Mille Lacs. I'm a resident of Garrison, Minnesota, which is on the northwest corner of Mille Lacs. There's basically 4 towns. On the southeast corner, you have Isle. The northeast corner, you have Malmo. Northwest corner, you have Garrison. And then you have Onamia in the southwest corner. So I did live in Isle for about 15 years. And then we moved up here about 3 years ago. And I guide walleye and smallmouth on Mille Lacs. And this time of year, as long as the ice is out, I usually start doing panfish about a month before walleye and pike opener.
That's actually awesome. I did not know that. So maybe we can touch on that as well. But before we get too far into the upcoming season, do you mind touching a little bit about how ice went and all of that leading up into where we're at now?
Sure. So I think we got to kind of rewind a hair to I'm just guessing you guys must have had a miserable. It would seem like it was every 3 to 5 days. Here, at least, it blew 25 to 45 miles an hour. And more times than not, when that wind came, there was some type of snow to go with it, whether it was 2 inches. And when it's blowing 25 miles an hour, it doesn't matter if you get a half inch or a foot of snow, because you're still going to end up with 2 or 3 foot drifts. And I mean, I don't even know how many guide trips I had to cancel. I had to cancel a ton of guide trips due to weather. And then on the lake, I mean, transportation was treacherous. We had thin ice in a lot of spots. We had cracks ripping through. Generally just got a late start to it. And then still, even at the end of the season, I think that the thickest ice I measured on Mille Lacs was 34 inches. And most places were 24 to 28 inches for the whole year, which is extremely light. And then to couple that with the ice just went off Mille Lacs, like, I forget the official, I think it was like the 6th or whatever they officially called it, and it's like they call ice out on Mille Lacs when you can drive a boat from Garrison to Isle, which is kitty corner basically across the lake. Well, so you can, half the lake can still have ice on it and they can call ice out, which I don't agree with. It's like, if half the lake still has ice on it, that's not ice out. If someone asked how much ice is on the lake, I'd be like, it's still half ice covered. Like, your drink is still half full, I mean, that's not, hey, it's open.
You're making a really good point, though, because that's the thing is people hear ice out and they assume that there's no ice. And you know what that does is it just backs up all the boat launches. All of a sudden, everyone wants to be there. They expect it to be summer. And now you're all even squished in a smaller spot of water.
So, and that's what kills me. It's like, hey, if it's ice out, because Mille Lacs largely cabins, there's Garrison and Isle. They each have like 250 people on them. And the population swing on the weekends grows like 10,000 in each town. I mean, it's huge. But when you announce ice out on Mille Lacs, and all these poor people come up to open up their cabins, and they're like, they can't even see the end of the ice. So round that, like, if you got 7 miles of ice, people are like, ice out? What are they talking about? But they can still call it. I don't know. So the day they called ice out, I actually jumped in my boat and went out there, and the lake was less than half covered, but still I would call it, it was like a third ice covered. And I would kind of going, safety wise, cabin owner wise, like, if you're reporting the news, I think we just need to be a little bit more responsible with how we call ice out on Mille Lacs. But other than that, we had a rough winter. Transportation was a bummer, but like going into season, I was kind of hoping after ice fishing got over, we would have this nice slow progression of warmth. And like the snow drifts just melted at my house like a week ago. Like, the winter went away is kind of what it was.
That is crazy. You guys had a lot more snow than we did. And that does play into all the different conditions. But it is actually crazy to hear that you've had enough snow that you still had drifts, because we have, that's been gone for a while, Grass.
I honestly, if I went behind my Yeti right now, I mean, it's shaded. There's still like a 3.5 foot drift behind my fish house. I'm at it like, why? Like, I just about got the hose and like tried to murder a snowdrift with the hose just to make it go away. It's like almost fishing opener, and I looking at snow. My kids were like, "Oh, we can make snowballs." I'm like, "Nope, we're done."
No.
You can like put snowball ice in your live well, keep your fish cold and fresh.
I went behind there and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I mean, and I can't remember a winter like this where it just never quit. I think it was like 10 years. Yeah, it was like 2011, 2012 was a pretty rough winter. But that wasn't a lot of snow. I mean, we had a lot of snow, not as much as this year, but we had like, I think it was like 17 days where it was below 40 below. And that was just cold. Like this year, it's like, some of the resort owners and some of the other guys on the lake, you see them in the morning and they're like hanging their head low, and it's like you could tell it was kind of getting to them a little bit.
Yeah. Well, so with all of that, does that mean that we're going into Minnesota fishing opener with colder water temps than normal?
The last 2 days really, when I was out there looking at ice out a few days ago, the water temp was right at 43, 44 degrees. So that's typically when ice out goes out, you're going to have water temps in the low 40s. Like everyone thinks like the water temps are going to be 33, 34 degrees. And that's not the case. Like even if when you're ice fishing and you put a temperature gauge down 3 or 4 feet, it's going to be like 38 to 40 degree water temperature. So when the ice came off, it was normal temp. And today it actually got up right around 50, about 1.5 miles, 2 miles out. So we're going to be sitting. Mille Lacs doesn't really warm quick. If we warm this time of year 5-6 degrees in a week, that's a lot. So I'm thinking we're going to be right around 48 to 52 degrees on opener. The fishing is going to be phenomenal. I mean, as you guys know, when you have cold water, when you have late ice out, it means a lot as far as walleye fishing is concerned. You have the fish are going to be really close to the spawning grounds. Some of those fish are still going to be hanging around to spawn. And even if they're done spawning, they're still going to be in that same general area. So I feel kind of bad for the walleyes because they have no idea what's coming for them. I mean, with the population that Mille Lacs has and the spawning grounds, and it's going to be lights out. And the part I love about Mille Lacs really is if you like the jig fish, pitching jigs, side scanning fish and whipping the boat around, spot locking and throwing a jig and feeling that thunk is just absolutely awesome.
Yeah, we're lucky over here because we have the Green Bay system and a few river tributaries we can fish, and so that we spent a majority of our late ice on the river, doing some vertical jigging and caught some pretty nice fish. And then now the water is up in that 50 degree mid 50 range, and the post spawn fishing is just phenomenal right now over in our area. You can pull cranks around or jig or you drag crawlers. You can do whatever you want, and you're just catching a bunch of walleyes. So like you said, like the water temp is just perfect this year as far as that's concerned for opener.
Well, and I think what that'll translate to is, at least in the Midwest here, with the ice out we had seemingly everywhere, North, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Minnesota, the longer we can keep cooler water temperatures, the longer we keep that really, really good bite going into the season. And as long as you guys remember last year, like we had ice out was last year ice went out 6 weeks ago. Like it was like, oh, we were like, wow, is that early? And we came into fishing opener and the bass were already making beds, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is early. Now fast forward this year, and the smallmouth are still in their wintering holes going, it's cold.
Yeah.
Freezing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think what we're going to see for the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're just going to see more fish caught. And, quite frankly, I think we deserve it after the winter we had.
That is true. That is actually, yeah, we do. You're right. Quick shout out to, a bunch of people. Ray and Michelle. Tracy Corona's checking in. She's saying hi to you. Says that you guys go way back. James Sullivan, hello. And Megan, one of our other favorite striker people. We have to have you on the show someday too, because you're somebody that people talk to. That's awesome. But, Brad, we're talking all about like walleyes and stuff. But you kind of hinted at the smallies. And gosh, I got to say, like, walleyes are great. But when you catch a smallie on Mille Lacs, like, you're never going to look back. So where are they right now? Or what are they doing? Or what does that look like?
So smallmouth's one of my favorite fish to fish. Typically what I'll do with our guide service is we've got 2 boats, and I'll typically do the smallmouth trips just because I love them. Smallmouth fishing on Mille Lacs right now, you can't target them legally, but once opener comes, it's catch and release. And what we see is those fish, they're more cold sensitive than walleye. They winter very well on Mille Lacs. Their survival rates really, really well. But what happens is they're they don't tolerate, their attitude in cold water right now is like, they don't like it. they're like, they'll go from their wintering areas to their bedding areas, and they'll start to, get their schools formed. And then when the water gets about 55, 60, you'll see them start to pair up. And then that's when they'll make a bed, and that's when they'll bust out those schools. But so we have a little ways to go. But you're right. If you catch a smallmouth on Mille Lacs, it's usually giant. I mean, last year I think we did I think it was 210 or 212 fish over 5 pounds just in my guide boat. And a lot of those come May, June, and July, and a lot of those are multiple fish days where it's not uncommon to get 4 to 10 fish over 5 pounds in a day, especially when you're on a year like right now, when those fish are full of spawn, and those 4 1/4 pounders are actually 5 pounders because they're so full of eggs. And then those, you imagine a 4 3/4 pounder that's got a pound and a half of egg. I mean, they're just massive. So it's just it's kind of a bummer when they spawn out, because it's like, oh, they went back to normal size, but they're still giant.
Okay, but you're also kind of giving a false impression, because people think normal size smallie. Like, I don't know where people at home are fishing, and I hope that you have wonderful, giant, huge smallies in your life as well. But I'm just saying, I showed up to Mille Lacs, and the first smallie I caught, first of all, I was certain that it was a rock. And the other thing is, one of the fish that I pulled up, I swear to you, the girth around was more than the overall length of the fish. Like, literally, I think it was a 16-inch fish, but is the roundest around fish I've ever, like, it blows my mind. I know that's ridiculous to say, it was really that big. So, I mean, it's funny to hear you say that. You're right. In spawn, they even get bigger than that, and that blows my mind.
It's super cool. So before spawn, they're super round, and you have a fish that was normally 4 pounds is now 5 pounds. So all the fish in the system, essentially, a nice 4-pound fish in midsummer right now is 5+ pounds. So that's why those numbers of people like, oh, he doesn't catch 200 fish over 5 pounds. Like, yeah, I do. Like, follow me on Snapchat, you'll see it. Like, there's like, we're always chucking 5s back, but that's a short run. And last year our numbers were down a hair just because of the warm water. But this year we're going to go in and we're just going to crush all those big smallmouths, catch and release, of course. And then it'll be like end of July, August before they start getting those bodies back. And then it'll be game on, which is kind of perfect if you think about it, right? Because July, first part of August, kind of the dog days of summer. And then we kind of slip into cooler temperatures, and then we get our big bass back.
That's true.
Mhm.
That's true. You're talking about some interesting things here, and I'm imagining you like guiding a trip of people who don't know what to expect with these smallies on the lake. So I gotta first ask, like, how do you like go about teaching somebody who doesn't normally do this about, like, the hook set or how to fish? Do you have tips for people who maybe haven't been to Mille Lacs for smallies?
I do. And when I have multiple people in the boat, I usually try to identify the guy that needs the most help or that needs to learn the most, and I'll have him up in the front with me. And typically on guide trips, I don't usually fish. That's one thing where I see a lot of guides doing, where I'm firmly convinced that some of these guides think that your customers are paying you to watch you catch fish, and that can be furthest from the truth. They don't want you standing in front of them, mopping up all the fish, acting like a hot shot. They're hiring you to learn, because they want to have a good time, or they want to duplicate that in their own boat. And that's what you're trying to teach them. So when I get guys that are just trying to brush up, or they're great largemouth fishermen, but not that great at smallmouth, I typically start with the basics. And if I can teach someone how to slow roll a tube, or really work a light tube on the bottom. And the reason I'll start with the tube is tubes are pretty snag resistant, and they still catch fish. So if you can work a tube slowly on the bottom and just skip it, you can work a Ned rig fairly easily. Then we move into creature baits, which you try to stay within a foot of the bottom and try to keep a nice swimming action and then a pause, things like that. And you just kind of go through different techniques with them until you find one that person really gets and that they can duplicate. And then as long as they can keep that lure in the water and as long as I can keep them on fish, even if it's not the preferred method, like let's say they're hitting creature baits or grubs, and it's really a Ned rig bite, as long as they can keep that lure in there and fish it effectively, they're still going to catch more fish than if they worked a Ned rig horribly. So like, that's what you kind of balance out is you try to pick their strengths and build from that. And the other thing is make sure that when they leave your boat, the last hour or two, do you have any questions? Is there anything you want to try? Is there anything, that you want to learn? And that's what I think is key, is that when someone comes away from your boat, a new customer or a customer wants to learn, as long as they're taking things they can use in the future away from that trip, I mean, I consider that a success. But especially if there's kids in the boat, oh my gosh. It's like, if we have kids in the boat, it's like adults in the back, kids up front, and you keep your head down and keep your sunglasses on and you try to catch as many fish as possible, because you think about being like a 13-year-old kid and catching, like you said, like a 16-inch bass. To that kid, that's 15 pounds. Huge.
But on Mille Lacs, it really might be, though. I do love your advice, though, and it looks like people at home are kind of saying that same thing in the comments. But I think really it's something that can apply to any angler and really almost any season, because one of the things I hear a lot is people get so caught up in like, what does social media say? What's working right now? What are the colors? Like as if there was only one key to unlock the magic of a fish mouth or whatever, but I think that's the thing, is like finding what you are good at as an angler or your boat or like whatever. And that I think is a really great tip.
And that's something that we kind of figured out when we were up there last fall, was we tried everything else.
I was wondering if you were going to...
We tried all the stuff that social media and TV and reading blogs and all that stuff. We tried all that stuff and we're bad at it. We're not bass anglers. Avid bass
they just
anglers.
were biting on that tactic.
So we did what we do best, and we threw on some plastics. Just happened to be some swim baits, and we were trolling around, and we just used basic fishing knowledge. Fish like points, fish like rocks, and we just fished rocky points. And then we were getting asked by the rest of our group, where are you fishing? Because none of us, there's been one bass caught by everyone else, and you guys are like posting like a bajillion pictures of bass. And we're like, we're just trolling around swim bass. Yeah. So yeah, you just go do what you're good at and you'll catch fish.
Exactly. And that's the confidence thing. If there's one thing, like the reports that do come out, for the most part, they're fairly accurate, but no one's going to give up the 100% ghost. I know when I do a fish report, I'm not giving you the waypoint I'm on. I'm not telling you where, like I got a fish there. I mean, it's not, I have more than one spot that we're fishing, but I don't want to have a day where the fishing is a little slow and I need those 2 or 3 spots to get those catch rates up, and there's 30 people on them, or they've been sore lipped, an hour before that. I don't want that happening. But what I will say is, when I do a report and I'm saying, hey, they're hitting watermelon grubs with the 1/8 ounce head, work tight to the bottom, you can bank on that. With the regulations that are on Mille Lacs, you don't have to worry about people taking fish out of the system. And for the most part, people aren't taking smallmouth and grilling them up. They're putting them back. It's like, and so you really don't have to, like, so what if someone went over there and caught a couple of fish? Good for them. I hope they did. And being part of the community, I hope that, not everyone that comes up here is going to hire a guide. Not everyone is going to jump on a launch boat. I want people that come up here and spend time in this community to be successful on the body of water and come back. And even if they don't support me, They go to the Holiday gas station. They go to Malmo Market. They go to Johnson's Portside. They go to Garrison Sports. They go to all these places and buy the lures, buy the whatever is working, and chat them up. I mean, that's the best you can hope for.
Yeah, that is actually a really great point. And then, gosh, warm weather is kind of something we've been talking about. Does there end up being a topwater smallie bite on Mille Lacs?
A what? What was
Like
that?
a topwater smallie bite? I know. Is that crazy? It just like sounds so fun. I just want to do that.
Oh, I don't even know. What's that?
Okay. Okay. So anyways, the other thing that you had mentioned earlier on in the show though was the panfish. So I guess like I'm interested in that too. What do you have to say about that?
I will give you the keys of the car on the Mille Lacs topwater bite. I was just
I don't know. I was just gonna move on.
Oh, it is the number one question of my customers. They're like, oh, I want to get on a topwater bite. I'm like, well, you're coming in August. Or the guy who wants to hire you out in October, November. He's like, I was really hoping to get on a topwater bite. I'm like, you're not even in the right year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we can try, but it probably ain't gonna happen. And that's where I always encourage my customers, my job is to catch the most amount of fish possible. It's up to them to decide whether they want to do that or throw a topwater lure around and catch one or two fish, But so here's what the keys to the car is on topwater on Mille Lacs. Typically, the topwater bite revolves around the bug hatches. So right before the bug hatches is when you're going to get a really good topwater bite. And then towards the end of the hatches is when you're going to have a really good topwater bite too. Typically right in the middle of those bug hatches, they're so, well, you guys know, they're so massive here and on Green Bay and things. The fish can literally eat 24 hours a day during a bug hatch. And it can be difficult to catch them because they're so full. And that's why the beginning of the bug hatch and at the end of the bug hatch is really key. And some of the top lures for that, the best, and I know some people will probably argue this, but the best topwater lure on Mille Lacs, if you know how to fish it, is the Bagley Sunny Bee Twin Spin. Is dynamite lure. It's got some chunk to it. You can chuck it a mile. It's loud, and if you pop it downwards, it'll submarine just a little bit. So let's say you have a fish following right behind your topwater lure, and he pops it a couple times, maybe knocks it out of the water, and doesn't commit to that. If that doesn't work and you're jigging up and kind of moving those props, if you point your rod tip down and give it a snap, and that lure will go boop and then back up, 9 times out of 10, when that lure goes right down, that fish will crush it. So that's why I like, for topwaters on Mille Lacs, I really like a lure that will do more than one thing. Like poppers, where you just go pop, pop, pop across the surface. Those will work. I see fish get conditioned to them. I really like topwaters that have props on them that you can make them pop, you can make them prop, you can submarine them, or you can just dead stick them and slowly twitch them. So yes, there is a really, really good topwater bite on Mille Lacs. A lot of times, it's like calling an audible on these trips. When the topwater bite's going, I will call my customers and say, hey, topwater bite's really on fire. But it's happening mainly towards the end of the trip. So let's start at 9 today and fish until 6 and have 4 or 5 solid hours of chucking topwater. And what I will say about topwater, let's say a guy gets 15 fish on topwater. By the time we get to the dock, he's like, oh, caught 50 fish on topwater. It's like, no, you didn't. It seemed like that, but
yeah.
It's truly amazing, especially when I know I'm getting long-winded, but when you're working, I get so passionate about topwater. So you're working in back to the boat and you see like 6 fish following this prop bait and you're like, oh my God, there's like 5 5-pounders in that school and none of them will hit. It's like, oh, and they see the boat and they scoot away and your customers are just like, that was a tournament bag right there.
Yeah.
all those fish. It's just crazy.
That's really super exciting. The crazy news about that, though, is for people that were listening, the thing about the bug hatches in Minnesota, from now until it snows again, it's constant because there's mosquitoes for days.
Right there. Like, and people, like, they'll be like, oh, they're not that bad. They're not that bad.
Oh, no.
I buy 15 gallons of windshield when Fleet Farm puts it on sale. This is my wife laughed. I will fill a cart full of windshield washer fluid. It goes on sale for like $1 or $1.50. And they don't limit it. So I'm like, yeah, I'm buying 15, 20 jugs. When the bugs hatch around here, there are some times where I will burn, especially like coming across the north end of the lake, where you get on top of that hill and you have to slow down because your windshield is so goobered up from these things.
Yeah. Gross. Fish love it though. That's funny. Awesome. So I guess I am going to move back to what I almost asked you before, though. You had mentioned panfish. Tell us a little bit about that.
So a lot of the area lakes surrounding Mille Lacs, they have decent panfish populations in them. And the reason they're there is Mille Lacs is a shining star, and it takes a lot of pressure off of these area lakes. A lot of these area lakes don't get fished until we have a stiff wind or Mille Lacs is unfishable, or, you know, you see guys that 16, 17-foot boats are like, I'm not going out there today. And then they go fish a smaller area lake. And a lot of these smaller area lakes are connected to Mille Lacs, and a lot of them actually have smallmouth. A lot of them have pretty big crappies and pretty big bluegill. So it's a nice, you know, anyone looking to come to Mille Lacs and they're a little bit intimidated because they may have a 14 to just say 18-foot boat or whatever. If you play the wind on Mille Lacs, you can fish anywhere. You know, if you get a 30-mile-an-hour wind straight out of the west, launch on the west side and just stay close to shore. You'll be able to fish that whole west side and just play the wind. Don't be on the east side of the lake and go, oh man, it's a wind day, and stay at your cabin and kind of mope around. Nope. Go over to the other side of the lake, launch your boat and start catching fish. And if you're not confident, then jump on Minnesota Lake Finder, look at the lakes around the resort or wherever you're staying, and pick one with a high panfish population, turn on your fish finder, and you'll have no problem going to any of these little lakes and catching a lot of panfish.
That's super exciting, actually. Oh gosh, I just start hearing panfish and it's like crazy. I'm ready for it. You know, we just had walleye season here, it feels like, and where we're at in Wisconsin. So I don't know. I might just have to do that.
Yeah. Well, we're still in the middle of it. I mean, most of our system fish are spawned out, and so now's the time to take the crawlers out and drag them around and go get your limit for dinner. But yeah, we're kind of past that. We're gonna go start. We've gotten some tips that they're swimming around in the channels, and we're gonna go hit some panfish up this weekend, I think.
It was a big complaint around our area here, is especially, you know, I stopped into the Garrison Sports this morning just to chat them up and see when minnows were going to be in and that type of thing. And there's an old timer in there, and he was just not having any of it. He was just playing. He's like, man, we didn't get a panfish season. And I'm like, well, you can go fish them now. And he goes, wow, last year we had a month and a half of them. And I'm like, yeah, we did have a month and a half. You know, so the Mille Lacs ice went out, and about 3 or 4 days before that, all the smaller lakes went out. So we haven't even been ice free here for 2 weeks yet. So like a lot of these guys are like, what panfish season? You know, and what I kind of like about it is we're coming into walleye opener and big game opener for big fish. And the panfish are going to be forgotten about until dog days of summer, which is going to help preserve those populations again. So it's kind of a win-win, except for Jerry at the bait shop that feels a little disgruntled because he didn't get his crappie time in this year.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
One of the things that I guess I have to bring up, and you're probably going to laugh at me. When we were there fishing Mille Lacs, we did try to do a little bit of pan fishing, and it can be tough out there, I know. But one of the things that I learned is the amount of giant rock bass in there. I just was shocked. I was shocked. There is huge fish. So even though we didn't find like the monster crappies that we were looking for, and we found a few, but actually I was pleasantly surprised catching those.
So there was I don't know. I love telling stories. I hope you get there was a long time, like 12, 15 years ago. And we're out on a well-known rock pile on the lake. This was before the zebra mussels had really taken hold and really cleared the water up. And Mille Lacs is always known for giant rock bass. Well, the state record's like a pound or something. It's really not that big. Well, I got my guys up there, really good customers, and we were corking because it's really wavy, and we're drifting bobbers and leads over the top of these rock piles, and whack, one went down, set the hook, and I was like, oh man, I don't know what that is. Kind of thought it was a rocky, and he gets it up, and I'm like, I just grabbed it, he lifted it up, I grabbed it, unbuttoned it, threw it back in the water. He's like, what are you doing? I'm putting that sky back. He's like, oh no, you don't. We're keeping them. Oh, I am not pulling into the dock with 50 of these things in my live well when all the other guides are getting off the lake. I'll never live this one down. Hawthorne was out there catching scuzzy rock bass all day with, I just never hear the end of it. And I'm like, okay, guys, we can keep these, but we're going in an hour early. And I didn't tell them because I didn't want anyone to see me. Hey, it's going to take me forever to clean these things. So I think we had 20 or 30 of them in there. I went and I knifed them all up, put them in a bag. And the guy he was helping me. He was pretty cool. And this giant bag full of rock bass fillets. And then I have walleye, back when you keep fish out here. I had their walleye fillets in another one. We're at this restaurant resort where they would fry fish. I'm out there cleaning, getting the boat ready, and I come in there and here these guys got a giant pizza tray mounded with fish. Like cook comes out and hands it to these guys. Were handing fillets to the whole bar and everyone's chowing on these things. I kind of had a feeling, I'm like, you guys are feeding the whole bar rock bass. And they did. And everybody loved them.
Everybody loved them.
They loved them. They couldn't tell the difference. And I was like, well, that's really, really cool. But the moral of the story is, if I truly believe that the state record rock bass has been caught and released on Mille Lacs about 2,000 times, because I put my name in the record book for the state record rock bass. And I know a few, they don't want their name in there for the state record rock bass either, because we'll make fun, right? We'll be like, oh yeah, so-and-so, he don't do walleye or bass. He's the rock. He just does rock bass.
That's really funny. That's really funny. You're making an interesting point though. You referred to them as scuzzy rock bass, but that is a crazy thing about, when you catch these fish, they're I don't know. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, it's just a form of ick. The fish tank fish get them, and it's just something it's just a skin infection that they get. It doesn't hurt them most of the time. It's just where they tend to live in the rocks, so they're always rubbing up against rocks or rubbing up against pieces of wood, and it just kind of wears that slime coat down, and so they get a little infection, and they're fine. Obviously, if there's 2-pound rock bass, 3-pound rock bass in Mille Lacs, they're not dying off every year, But
when you see them in the water, so that fuzz or that you're talking about, in the water, it's all gelatinous, right? Get them out and it kind of lays against them and it doesn't look that bad. But when they're there and you're kind of sight fishing and you see them and you're like, wow, that thing's all that big hanging off of it, It hurts, but it just doesn't add to the whole you look at a walleye and you're like, oh, and that you're gonna taste good. When you see a rock bass and he's got a little scuzz on him, I'm not thinking, oh man, I'm gonna cut that scuzz off. That fish is gonna be delicious. I'm not thinking. Oh.
Apparently, with the right fish fry batter, anything is possible. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we've been talking here all night about fishing. Do you still have like days available for guide trips?
We do. We have right now there's 6 or 7 days open in June. July, which was weird this year. July ended up booking ahead of June, which has never happened before. And I don't know if it was just people's vacation calendars or what. But there's 5-6 days open in July and 5-6 days open in June. And my other guide boat, that one we can pretty much get anyone in that one anytime they want. But for the most part, if someone's looking to come to Mille Lacs and hire a guide that's been here a long time, go ahead and give me a call. You won't regret it. We'll make your Mille Lacs experience the best we possibly can.
And for somebody who's maybe never been out on a trip, or even on Mille Lacs, is there a way that you help prepare these people? Like, how should they be dressing or preparing for the elements?
So I always tell people, especially this time of year, I'm a big proponent of the striker gear, where a lot of times I will wear my winter suit. If we get nasty weather this weekend, I'm gonna have my striker suit on, and I'm also gonna have my inflatable on, just because I feel like it adds that extra layer of protection. And we're wearing it in the summer for the same reason we're wearing it in the winter. And just because we don't have snow on the ground, well, if it's 45 degrees and blowing 20 miles an hour, I'm putting my suit on. I mean, I'm not that tough anymore. I know I'm gonna put that on and stay warm. But that would be the number one thing, is make sure you dress warm. And a lot of people where they have thousands of hours on smaller bodies of water, and they come out to a big body of water, and once you get farther offshore, it may be 70 degrees onshore. If the water's 52 degrees, it's going to be 52 degrees in the boat. So you find people getting chilled. But I would say number one is make sure you have the proper clothing. Number two is make sure you apply your sunscreen. Smaller bodies of water, you get tree cover, you have things where the sun doesn't reflect or refract as much. When you get into big open water, you'll see a lot of people get burnt underneath their nose or underneath their eyelids, or they'll just get burnt in weird places. So I would say bring that sunblock, not sunscreen, sunblock, and make sure that you're putting it everywhere, behind your ears, under your nose, rub it into your beard, just get it coated really, really well. And then map your day out. So if you're launching, let's say at say Garrison Public Access, and you want to run in to go eat somewhere, map that out. Look at your map and go, okay, we can stop and eat at McDonald's or go to the Y or wherever you can launch. You can kind of plan your day out to have a really fun day, to go catch fish, go in to eat, maybe fill up, and just have a really, really fun time.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, you're making me. I'm going to call you after this. But with that, I mean, I guess if people are interested in a trip, how do they get a hold of you?
It's really easy. MilleLacsLakeGuide.com. That was, so everyone's like, how did you get that web address? And it's really simple. It was open.
It was open.
Like 20 years ago, I was like, oh, and I think I bought it for like 99 cents. So that's the web address, MilleLacsLakeGuide.com. My email is MilleLacsLakeGuide@gmail.com. And then anyone that wants to call or text, my number is pretty easy. It's 651-271-8600. And I'd be happy, even if someone's not going to hire me as a guide, if they have some questions on, hey, where should I stay? I got my own boat, or what would you recommend? Or, hey, I'm bringing my family out. Don't hesitate to call me. If it's super busy and we're in season, I may not get back to you that day, but I'll for sure get back to you in a day or two. And I will gladly help anyone out that's looking to come here and enjoy the week or enjoy their vacation.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who maybe just want to kind of follow along on your adventures and all of that, do you have social media that people can follow you?
I do. I'm really liking my TikTok right now. So I'm 218 Fishing on there. I think that's what I am. It's either 218 Fishing or 218 Guide. I don't remember. It's one of those two. you'll see this ugly mug on there when. But then I've got Hawthorne's Guide Service on Facebook and Hawthorne's Guide Service on Instagram. But I'm really liking sharing those small videos with people. I really, the big fish releases, what's working now and then. And then even on Snapchat, you get a guy that's like, oh, I saw the lure, I got you. It's like, oh, good, good for you.
Perfect. That's awesome. Well, I feel like I have like a million more things that I could ask you, but we don't want to take up your whole night, and I'm sure that we'll have you back sometime. So thanks for being here with us tonight and talking about all of this.
Well, you guys too. I wanted to say I follow along. I absolutely adore you guys' podcast. You guys have of great info on here. I'm like you guys is like closet biggest fan because you guys came out. You have great content. Your frequency's there. You're not afraid to like ask the hard questions, like top water on Mille Lacs. Did I dodge it? Yeah, I tried to dodge it. If I was gonna give away the keys to the car on Mille Lacs, smallmouth, I'd rather give it to you guys and your fan base than anyone else.
Well, we appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of speechless. So I feel like I'm your biggest fan. So that's like crazy. Let's go fishing together sometime.
I'll tell you what, you guys come up here this summer, call me, and we'll make it happen.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. And then we'll make sure to share it with everybody at home because that would be a whole ton of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And for everybody at home, thank you guys for being here because you guys are a huge part of the fun as well. And with that, looking forward to seeing everybody on next week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
Night, everybody.